Okay guys, so for this video I have to stand up and not point this camera at myself because this is where a lot of things kind of happen. So after days of researching and looking around, I finally found this laser. This is by So3Yoon, he's a Russian, and this laser could ionize air. It's very hard to build, and this did not get built right away, but this is what I found on the internet. So I started emailing that Russian, and we still talk to this day, but I was just asking him question upon question. In fact, half of this book is how to build this laser, because it's just very difficult to understand, and the parts in here are very expensive and tedious. But from talking to him, I also talked to a guy named Jared Kinsey, and here's the story from what I remember it to be. Oh, and by the way, that's when we thought that square box would work. But here's a story that I remember. So to build this laser, I needed a 15,000 volt transformer, and I already started building it at the time. You can see all this plexiglass and all these papers and electrodes with holes in it were from me trying to build this laser. But ultimately it needed a 15,000 volt transformer. And when I finally bought it, it cost me 150 bucks. This is what it was. And let me get around here. It wasn't wired or anything, and the guy who I bought it from didn't exactly tell me how to wire it. And I was very afraid to wire it and hook it up, thinking something bad would happen. I mean, this is 15,000 volts at 60 milliamps. If something bad happens, then I'm toast. So I actually spent a long time figuring out how to wire it. In fact, I let it sit for about a month when I would just keep building that as much as I could. And eventually my parents took it away from me and hid it because they were afraid I was going to kill myself with it, because I wouldn't know how to use it. And that's actually when I started building other things, because I couldn't do anything more with the laser, and I was too afraid to hook this up, and I didn't have it from my parents at the time. So I actually went and built this. This took me about probably a week or two. This is a Wimhurst machine. This can generate 200,000 volts at microamps, and it would hurt like hell to touch, but it actually helped me a lot with working with high voltages, because I could spin this around, I could get used to how loud it was, and I could see the spark, get close to the spark, and I would be fine. It was after that I then built this Bonetti machine, which is 1.5 million volts between the two electrodes, and that one is just insane. I mean, so here's the Leyden jars for this to store the capacitance. Those are the Leyden jars for the Bonetti machine. They're 5-gallon buckets, and this actually didn't work, and it was because of this working that I was able to plug in that transformer, because I actually got so mad that this wasn't working, because I worked on it for like 3 weeks, worked really hard. In fact, my discs actually broke in half at one point. I walked into my room, I plugged this in, and I heard it humming. In fact, I can plug it in right now, I think. So when I plugged it in, I heard, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I heard this noise, and then I just went like this. And I don't know how happy I was that I was finally messing with my transformer. And I told my mom that I didn't kill myself plugging it in. But yeah, you get the point. So then I was like, okay, I can finally do this. But as I continued to build this, I kept realizing how difficult this is to build. I mean, this is insanely difficult. So I actually ended up building a TEA nitrogen laser. And I already have a tutorial on this. You can go watch on my channel. But basically, you know, AC to DC coming in, two capacitors that discharge really fast, excite the nitrogen. Nitrogen produces a UV beam, and the UV beam can excite dyes, which will make a dye laser, whatever. But I got that to work, and then I actually built this, which is a reduced pressure nitrogen laser. And this actually never worked, but that was because I just kept going with this. Because I thought, why keep wasting time? I already plugged in the transformer, let's get stuff moving here. So at one point, I had this whole thing done. And you can see the optics for this that I built pretty creative. Since mirrors will never be straight, mirror would go on here. And it could be tightened so that it couldn't bend the light the wrong way. And the other big piece was these capacitors. These are Russian 4,700 picofarad capacitors. But I didn't want to buy them because it would have cost me $200. So I actually designed things that would, like a tower, and this is slowly, hopefully, becoming more and more unreasonable. And finally, I finally made the move to buy these. I bought them for $150, and there's a lot here. There's, I believe, 15 or 16. You just can't see them because I took them off to put them on the gun here. And then basically this goes on here, optics go on here, and the part that really made me stop working on it was the fact that I had to vacuum this out, and at the same time put helium and CO2 in there, and it just wasn't going to work. I couldn't get those gases in there. I'm not good enough with that. I actually abandoned the entire project, and that was where I stood for a little while. And I just really gave up on ionizing air. I mean, I really couldn't do it. And if you think you can ionize air with something small or something you can buy for cheap, you can't. And if you want to try and build this, I do encourage you. I will make a tutorial later on the exact specifications. I could tell you exactly how to build this. I'm just too afraid to finish building it. But yeah, that's that. So that's where I stood with ionization. And then eventually I moved on to a spinning display, which I won't go over because all my ideas there are currently what I'm working on along with some other things, but that is where my journey ends for these videos.